I never thought I'd have to choose between my son and my sanity, but life has a way of forcing your hand when you least expect it. After 40 years of building a business from nothing, I finally had my dream home on the Malibu coast. What I didn't expect was how quickly that dream would become a battleground, with my own flesh and blood leading the charge against me. This is the story of how I learned that sometimes love means walking away. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up to how this delicious mess started. The salt air kissed my face as I stood on the balcony of my new home, $3.4 million of hard-earned success perched on a Malibu cliff. The ocean stretched before me like a promise of peace after decades of deadlines and design emergencies. I'd sold Eleanor Reed Interiors 6 months ago, at 67, for enough money to never worry again. The champagne in my hand was expensive, the bubbles as delicate as my newfound freedom. Then my phone rang. "Mom?" Caleb's voice had that tone, the one he'd perfected sometime after his 50th birthday. Part impatience, part condescension, wrapped in a thin veneer of affection. "Great news. We're coming to stay for a while." I took a slow sip of champagne, steeling myself. "That's wonderful, honey. When were you thinking?" "Tomorrow. Vanessa's parents are having their condo renovated, so they'll be coming too, just for a month or so." The champagne suddenly tasted sour. My son hadn't visited me once in the 3 months since I'd moved in, and now he was bringing an entourage? "Caleb, I haven't even finished unpacking." "Mom, they're family. You've got what, 6 bedrooms in that place? You can't possibly need all that space for yourself." I looked at my reflection in the window glass. Gray hair in a neat bob, lines etched around my eyes from years of smiling at difficult clients, a straight spine that had carried me through divorce, single parenthood, and building a company from my kitchen table. I hardly recognized the woman who now let her own son talk to her this way. "Of course," I heard myself say. "Family is always welcome." 24 hours later, I stood in my foyer watching Vanessa's father track sand across my hand-selected Italian marble. Behind him came her mother, her sister with 2 teenagers in tow, and finally my son and his wife. 6 people, 12 suitcases, and not a single thank you among them. "Mom, we took the master suite," Caleb announced, handing his luggage to me as if I were the bellhop. "Vanessa needs the steam shower for her sinuses." I blinked, momentarily speechless. "Caleb, that's my bedroom. All my things are there." Vanessa stepped forward, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. At 45, she was still beautiful in that polished, calculated way that had initially impressed me, but now felt like armor. "Eleanor, we can have the staff move your things to the blue room. It has that lovely view of the garden." "Staff? I don't have staff. I have a cleaning service that comes twice a week." Her smile tightened. "Well, then we'll have to fix that, won't we? A house this size needs proper management." Before I could respond, her father clapped his hands together. "Where's the bar in this place? After that drive, I need a real drink." "Richard, it's not this place. It's Eleanor's home," my son corrected. But the wink he gave his father-in-law told me everything I needed to know about where his loyalties lay. I showed them to the living room, where Richard immediately made himself comfortable with my 30-year-old Macallan. Her mother, Diane, began rearranging my cushions, muttering about impractical white furniture. The teenagers disappeared upstairs, the thunder of their footsteps echoing through my once peaceful home. "Mom, we were thinking we'd have a little get-together tomorrow. Nothing big, just a few friends from LA who want to see the house," Caleb said, scrolling through his phone without looking at me. "I haven't even shown you where you'll be staying yet," I said, feeling increasingly like a ghost in my own home. "Oh, we looked at the floor plan online ages ago," Vanessa said, waving a dismissive hand. "We know where everything is." That night, I lay in the blue bedroom, not my carefully designed master suite with its perfect view of the moonlight on the ocean, and listened to the sounds of laughter downstairs. They were opening more of my wine, from the collection I'd carefully curated over decades. I pulled the pillow over my head, but it couldn't block the realization that I'd saved and sacrificed for 30 years to buy this house, and in less than a day, it had been colonized. 1 month stretched into 2. The few friends became weekly parties where strangers wandered through my home, using my bathrooms, spilling drinks on my rugs. Vanessa's parents showed no signs of leaving. In fact, they'd begun receiving mail at my address. Her sister came and went as she pleased, often bringing different friends who would stay for days at a time. I became a shadow, slipping from room to room, careful not to disturb the new order. When I mentioned to Caleb that perhaps it was time for some boundaries, he looked wounded. "Mom, we thought you'd be happy having family around. You were always complaining about being lonely after Dad left." That had been 30 years ago. I'd raised Caleb alone while building my business, never once complaining to him about loneliness. But arguing seemed pointless. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning, 3 months into what was supposed to be a temporary arrangement. I came downstairs to find a strange woman measuring my living room windows. "Excuse me," I said. "What are you doing?" "Oh, Mrs. Reed? I'm the interior designer Vanessa hired. We're just getting some preliminary measurements for the renovation." I stared at her, momentarily unable to form words. "Renovation?" "Yes. Vanessa feels the space needs updating. She mentioned you used to be in the business, so you'd understand the importance of keeping current. I'd designed this house down to the last doorknob. Every color, every texture had been chosen to create the peaceful haven I'd dreamed of for decades. And now, my daughter-in-law was going to update it? I found Vanessa by the pool, directing a landscaper about changes to my carefully selected native plants. "We need to talk," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. She glanced up, annoyed at the interruption. "Can it wait? We're in the middle of something here." "No, it cannot wait. You've hired an interior designer without consulting me?" She sighed, standing up and moving away from the landscaper. "Eleanor, let's be honest. The house is beautiful but dated. Very 2010. We're just bringing it into the present." "We? This is my house, Vanessa. I designed it. I paid for it." Her smile was patient, as if explaining to a child. "And we're so grateful you're sharing it with us. Caleb says you've always been generous. But since we're living here now, we should make it work for everyone." "Living here? This was supposed to be temporary." She patted my arm. "Well, it makes sense for all of us to be together, doesn't it? Caleb's firm has that new project in Santa Monica. My parents are settled now, and the house is much too big for just you." She looked out at the ocean view. "Besides, someone needs to manage a property of this size properly." In that moment, I saw with perfect clarity what was happening. My son and his wife weren't visiting. They were taking over. Gradually, systematically, they were pushing me out of my own life, and I had been letting them do it, one small concession at a time. "The renovations stop now," I said quietly, "and we need to discuss when everyone will be moving out." Vanessa's smile disappeared. "You might want to talk to Caleb before making declarations. He's meeting with a financial advisor today about putting the house in a family trust, for tax purposes." She turned back to the landscaper, dismissing me entirely. "Now, about those palms." I walked back into my house, feeling something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something colder, more determined. I'd spent my life accommodating others. My ex-husband until he left me for his secretary, clients with impossible demands, and now my son, who had apparently forgotten whose name was on the deed to this property. As I climbed the stairs to the blue bedroom that wasn't mine, I made a decision. I hadn't built a multi-million-dollar company by being a pushover. I'd done it by being strategic, patient, and when necessary, ruthless. If they wanted a war for this house, they would have one. And they were about to discover that this 67-year-old woman had weapons they couldn't begin to imagine. The next morning, I woke before dawn. Old habits die hard when you've spent decades running a business. I slipped out of the blue bedroom, still thinking of it as the blue bedroom, not mine, and made my way downstairs in the quiet darkness. For a precious hour, I had my kitchen to myself. I brewed a pot of the dark roast coffee that Vanessa had declared too bitter and replaced with some overpriced blonde blend. Standing at the window, with my mug warming my hands, I watched the sky lighten over the Pacific. This view, this moment, this was what I had worked for, and I was done letting it slip away. I took my coffee to my home office, the one room that had remained relatively untouched, probably because it contained filing cabinets rather than ocean views. Inside, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out the accordion folder containing all the documentation for the house purchase. The deed was there, my name alone on the title. Eleanor Jean Reed, owner. Not Caleb, not Vanessa, not family trust. My cell phone showed it was 6:30 a.m., early in California, but not in New York. I dialed a number I hadn't called in months. Eleanor? Sloane Archer's voice was crisp, professional, with the faintest trace of her Alabama upbringing. Is everything okay? You're calling awfully early. I need your help, Sloane. I'd met her 20 years ago when she was fresh out of law school, and I was battling a contractor who thought he could cheat a woman business owner. She'd not only won my case, but had become my corporate attorney and eventually my friend. What's going on? I could hear the shift in her tone, from friendly to focused. I outlined the situation in quick, efficient sentences, the kind we'd exchanged during countless business crises. By the time I finished, the sky was fully light, and I could hear movement upstairs. Jesus, Eleanor, Sloane said finally. Your son is trying to steal your house? I don't think he sees it that way. He's managing family assets or some such nonsense. Well, legally, he doesn't have a leg to stand on, assuming the house is entirely in your name and purchased with your funds. It is. Then your first step is simple. Don't sign anything. Nothing. Not even a birthday card. Especially anything related to a family trust or financial planning. That won't be difficult, but getting them out might be. Leave that to me. I'm going to email you some documents. Print them, but don't share them with anyone yet. And Eleanor, document everything. Dates, times, conversations, especially anything related to renovations or changes they're making without your permission. I can do that. Good. And Eleanor, this isn't just about the house, is it? I sighed, watching a seagull wheel over the cliffs. No, it's about respect. It's about remembering who the hell I am. That's my girl. I'll call you this afternoon. I ended the call just as footsteps sounded on the stairs. Quickly, I locked the documents back in my drawer and moved to the kitchen, where I started a fresh pot of Vanessa's approved coffee blend. Always good to appear accommodating when you're planning a counteroffensive. Richard, Vanessa's father, shuffled into the kitchen in monogrammed silk pajamas, his silver hair tousled. Morning, he grunted, making a beeline for the coffee. At 72, he had the florid complexion of a lifetime drinker and the entitlement of a man who'd never heard the word no. Good morning, Richard. Sleep well? He grunted again, pouring coffee. Bed's too soft. Diane and I are thinking of ordering a new mattress. I smiled, adding just a touch of sweetness to my voice. Oh? For your condo when the renovations are finished? He looked momentarily confused. Right, the condo. He shuffled to the refrigerator and began rummaging through it like it was his own. By 9, the house was in full swing. Vanessa was on the phone with the interior designer, the teenagers were blasting music by the pool, and Caleb was nowhere to be seen, probably at the office, the only one actually working. Diane sat at my kitchen island, making lists. Eleanor, she said without looking up, we need to discuss the dinner party on Friday. This was the first I'd heard of any dinner party. Oh? Vanessa's invited the Holbrooks and the Chens. Robert Chen is considering Caleb for the Singapore project, so everything needs to be perfect. I see. I've made a shopping list. She slid a piece of paper across the counter. And we'll need to move that awful sculpture from the entryway. It's not the right energy for a business dinner. The awful sculpture was a bronze piece by a Native American artist I'd championed early in my design career. It had graced every home I'd owned for the past 20 years. The sculpture stays, I said quietly. Diane finally looked up, her surgically tightened face showing surprise. But it doesn't work with the tablescape Vanessa has planned. The sculpture stays, I repeated, then added with false brightness. But I have a wonderful idea for the dinner. Let me take care of it. Her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Vanessa has very specific ideas about the menu. I'm sure she does. But this is my gift. Please, I insist. After a moment, she nodded reluctantly. All right, but nothing too unusual. The Holbrooks are very traditional. Of course. I picked up my purse. If you'll excuse me, I have some errands to run. My first stop was the bank, where I opened a new account in my name only and transferred a significant portion of my funds from the joint account I shared with Caleb, an account I'd created years ago to help him with emergencies, never imagining he would try to use it against me. The bank manager looked concerned when I explained I wanted to remove Caleb as a signatory on all my other accounts. Family disagreement? he asked carefully. Family boundary adjustment, I corrected. Next, I drove to Marcel's, the most exclusive catering company in Malibu. Inside the elegant office, I was greeted by a young man with an immaculate suit and a discerning eye. Mrs. Reed, so lovely to see you, it's been some time. Marcel had catered the opening night of my last showroom 5 years ago. His memory for clients was impeccable. I need to arrange a dinner party, I said, for Friday evening, for 12 people. His eyebrows rose slightly. This Friday? That's challenging. I slid my black American Express card across the desk. I understand. Price is no object. 2 hours later, I left with a receipt for what would be the most lavish dinner party Malibu had seen this season, complete with rare imported truffles, vintage champagne, and a renowned chef flown in from New York, all charged to my personal account. On the way home, I made one more stop, a small, unmarked office in a professional building in Santa Monica. The man inside was in his early 60s, with the watchful eyes of someone who'd seen everything and the discretion of someone who'd tell nothing. Mrs. Reed, Graham Pierce said, rising to shake my hand. Sloan Archer said you might be calling. Graham had been a private investigator for 30 years, often working with Sloan on corporate cases. I'd used his services twice, once to investigate a suspected embezzlement and once to verify the assets of a potential business partner. He was thorough, ethical, and invisible. I need information, I said, taking a seat across from his desk. That's what I provide. He folded his hands on the desk. Sloan gave me the broad strokes. You're concerned about your son's intentions regarding your property. Yes, and about whether there have been any legal maneuvers I'm not aware of. He nodded. We'll do a complete background check on everyone involved, especially your daughter-in-law and her family. Financial status, outstanding debts, litigation history, the works. And we'll monitor for any filings related to your property. How long will it take? For the preliminaries? 48 hours. For the deep dive? About a week. He studied me carefully. Mrs. Reed, I should warn you that family investigations can uncover uncomfortable truths. I thought about the designer measuring my windows, the strangers wandering through my home, the casual dismissal in Vanessa's eyes. Mr. Pierce, I stopped being comfortable the moment my son decided my home was his for the taking. When I returned to the house, Vanessa's sister and her teenage children were packing up their SUV. Leaving so soon? I asked, unable to keep a note of hope from my voice. Just for a few days, she said, loading another suitcase. We're looking at houses in Santa Barbara. Caleb suggested we might all relocate to be closer together. One big happy family, right? One big happy family. The words echoed in my head as I climbed the stairs to the blue bedroom. One big happy family that had never included me except as the owner of the checkbook and the deed. I sat on the edge of the bed, opened my laptop, and began to type. Names, dates, events, conversations, everything Sloan had advised me to document. When I finished, I created a new folder titled Reclamation. By the time the sun set over the Pacific that evening, I had the beginnings of a plan. Not just to reclaim my house, but to reclaim my life. Caleb and Vanessa thought they were dealing with a lonely old woman grateful for company. They were about to discover they were dealing with Eleanor Reed, who hadn't built a design empire by accident. And if there's one thing I knew better than anyone, it was how to transform a space, including the space I occupied in my own family. Friday evening arrived with a perfect Malibu sunset painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I spent the day in willing exile, visiting my old friend Marjorie for lunch in Santa Monica and having my hair done at my regular salon. When I returned home at 4, the house was in controlled chaos. Vanessa directed workers positioning rented tables on the terrace while her mother supervised flower arrangements in the dining room. Neither acknowledged my arrival, which suited me perfectly. I slipped upstairs to prepare for the evening, selecting a black Armani pantsuit I'd purchased for my company's acquisition celebration. Classic, elegant, powerful. The woman in the mirror looked ready for battle. At 5:30, the doorbell rang. I descended the stairs to find 2 uniformed staff members standing in the foyer while Vanessa stared at them in confusion. "Excuse me, who are you?" she demanded. "Marcel's catering, ma'am," the taller one replied. "We're here to set up for the Reed dinner party." Vanessa turned as I reached the bottom step. "Mom, there must be some mistake. We're handling the dinner ourselves." I smiled pleasantly. No mistake, dear. I took care of everything, as discussed with your mother. Marcel's is handling all the food, service, and cleanup. But, her face flushed with anger, I've already planned the entire menu. The shopping is done. My mother has been cooking all day. Behind her, I could see Diane emerge from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel, her expression thunderous. Oh, I'm so sorry for the confusion, I said, not sounding sorry at all. But the arrangements are made. Marcel's team will take over from here. I turned to the staff. Please, come in. The kitchen is this way. What followed was a carefully choreographed 30 minutes of Marcel's team efficiently dismantling Diane and Vanessa's preparations and replacing them with their own, much more elaborate setup. China was exchanged, wine was replaced, and homemade appetizers were quietly disposed of in favor of delicacies I couldn't even pronounce. Vanessa finally cornered me in the living room, her voice a controlled hiss. What are you doing? This is humiliating. Is it? I raised an eyebrow. I thought I was helping. After all, this dinner is crucial for Caleb's career, isn't it? I wanted to make sure it was perfect. We had it under control. And now it's even more under control. The chef has 3 Michelin stars, Vanessa. I doubt your mother's pot roast would impress Robert Chen quite as much. Her eyes narrowed. This isn't about the food. You're making a point. I adjusted my bracelet, a heavy silver piece that had been a gift to myself when I landed my first major hotel contract. The point is that this is my house, and these are my guests this evening. I'm simply ensuring they have an experience worthy of the setting. The doorbell rang again before she could respond. The evening had begun. The Holbrooks arrived first. David, a silver-haired venture capitalist, and his third wife, Tessa, who looked barely older than Caleb. The Chens followed shortly after. Robert, elegant and reserved, and his wife May, who complimented my sculpture in the entryway with genuine appreciation. 2 more couples completed the group. The Bartons, old friends of Caleb's, and the Wexlers, who I gathered were important to Vanessa's social aspirations. Caleb arrived last, rushing in with apologies about traffic and a quick kiss on my cheek that felt more performative than affectionate. He faltered momentarily when he saw the elaborate setup on the terrace, but recovered quickly, ever the professional. Mom, he whispered as we moved toward the appetizer station. What have you done? Ensured your success, I replied smoothly. Isn't that what mothers are for? Dinner was a spectacle. Course after exquisite course appeared, each more impressive than the last. Wine flowed freely, the conversation grew animated, and even Vanessa couldn't maintain her frosty demeanor as the Chens and Holbrooks raved about the food. I played the gracious hostess, deflecting compliments to the chef and ensuring everyone's glasses remained full. As dessert was being served, a deconstructed Black Forest creation that looked more like art than food. Robert Chen raised his glass in my direction. Eleanor, this has been extraordinary. Caleb told me you were a woman of impeccable taste, but he undersold you. I inclined my head in acknowledgement. Thank you, Robert. It's a pleasure to host such distinguished guests. I understand you recently sold your design firm, he continued. An impressive achievement. Building something successful enough to attract acquisition isn't easy. It took 30 years, I said. Patience and vision are everything in business, wouldn't you agree? Absolutely. He glanced at Caleb. Your son tells me you're enjoying retirement, but if you ever feel the urge to consult, particularly on our Asian properties, I'd be interested in discussing possibilities. Beside me, I felt Caleb stiffen. This wasn't part of his plan, his mother being offered opportunities he was angling for. That's very kind, I replied. I'm focusing on enjoying my home at the moment, but I never rule anything out. Smart woman, David Holbrook chimed in. Real estate in this area is gold. This property must have cost a fortune, and it's only going to appreciate. It was a considerable investment, I agreed, but worth every penny for the peace and tranquility. I caught Vanessa's eye across the table and held it for a beat too long. The message was clear. This house is mine, and I know exactly what it's worth. After dinner, as guests lingered over coffee and liqueurs on the terrace, I excused myself briefly and slipped into my office. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Sloane. I texted her quickly, "Can't talk now. Dinner party. Call tomorrow." Her response was immediate. Urgent. Found something. Call first thing. A chill ran through me despite the warm evening. What had she discovered? When I returned to the terrace, Caleb was deep in conversation with Robert Chen. Their voices carried on the night air. The Singapore project would be perfect for your expertise, Robert was saying. But it would require relocation, at least temporarily. That wouldn't be an issue, Caleb replied confidently. We're actually considering a more permanent move to Asia. Vanessa loves Singapore. What about your mother? Robert glanced in my direction, though he didn't realize I could hear them. She seems very settled here. Caleb lowered his voice, but not enough. Mom's getting older. We're looking at some excellent retirement communities that would better suit her needs. This house is really too much for her to manage alone. My fingers tightened around my coffee cup. Retirement communities? I was 67, not 97. I'd been running a multi-million-dollar business 6 months ago. The party wound down around 11. As the last guests departed, lavishing final compliments on the evening, I signed the catering bill with a flourish, making sure Caleb caught sight of the total. His eyes widened slightly. Mom, that's insane for one dinner party. I smiled. Consider it my investment in your career, darling. Diane and Richard had already retreated upstairs, clearly defeated by the evening's turn of events. Vanessa was directing the cleanup with the efficient irritation of someone whose plans had been thoroughly hijacked. The dinner was a success, Caleb said, loosening his tie. Robert seemed impressed. With the house, certainly, I replied, and the food. And with me, he added sharply. The Singapore project is practically mine. Congratulations. I kept my voice neutral. Singapore is quite far away. He had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. About that, we should talk about some longer-term arrangements. Yes, we should. I gathered my clutch and wrap. But not tonight. I'm tired. Hosting is exhausting work, as you know. The subtle dig landed. He and Vanessa had been hosting in my home for months without lifting a finger beyond ordering me around. Tomorrow, then, he said. There are some financial matters we need to discuss. I look forward to it. I headed for the stairs, then paused. Oh, and Caleb? I've taken the liberty of scheduling the master bedroom to be repainted next week. I'll be moving my things back in on Monday. His expression confirmed what I already knew. He and Vanessa had no intention of giving up the master suite. Ever. Mom, that's not practical. Vanessa's allergies are miraculously specific to my bedroom? I smiled thinly. How fascinating. Good night, darling. In the blue bedroom, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. The evening had been a small victory, but the war was just beginning. I thought about Caleb's words to Robert Chen, retirement communities, better for her needs, and felt a cold anger solidify in my chest. My phone chimed with a text from Sloan. Graham found financial irregularities. Your son has been busy. Call me first thing. I stared at the message, a strange calm settling over me. I'd always believed that family was sacred, that there were lines you didn't cross. But as I sat in a bedroom that wasn't mine, in a house that was being systematically taken from me by my own child, I realized some lessons come too late in life. Family wasn't sacred. Respect was. And I was done hoping for what should have been freely given. Tomorrow would bring whatever Sloan and Graham had discovered. Tomorrow, I would begin the real fight. Not just for my home, but for my dignity. For the recognition that Eleanor Reed wasn't a problem to be managed or an asset to be acquired. I was the woman who had built everything they were now trying to take, and I was just getting started. I slept poorly that night, my mind racing with possibilities of what Sloan had discovered. At 6, I gave up trying to rest and slipped out of the house before anyone else was awake. The early morning fog wrapped around the cliffs as I drove to a small cafe in town that opened early for the surfing crowd. With coffee in hand, I found a quiet corner table and called Sloan. Tell me, I said when she answered. It's worse than we thought. Her voice was grim. Graham's preliminary report shows Caleb has been making moves for months. He's consulted with 3 different estate attorneys about challenging your mental capacity. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. My mental capacity? Apparently, your sudden decision to spend extravagantly on a Malibu property after selling your company raised concerns about your judgment. I could hear the air quotes in her voice. He's been documenting so-called evidence of cognitive decline. That's absurd. I've never been sharper. I know that. But he's building a paper trail, notes about you forgetting conversations, misplacing things, making irrational decisions. There's a draft petition for conservatorship, Eleanor. The word hit me like a physical blow. Conservatorship. My own son wanted to legally take control of my life, my decisions, my assets. There's more, Sloane continued. Graham found evidence that Caleb's financial situation isn't what it appears. His investment portfolio took a serious hit last year, something about a tech startup that tanked. And there's a tax lien against him that he's kept quiet. He needs money. The pieces clicked into place. That's what this is really about. Money and the house. Property values in your area have increased 15% since you purchased. He stands to gain millions if he can force a sale. I watched a young couple at a nearby table, heads bent together, laughing softly over some private joke. How long had it been since Caleb had shown me that kind of genuine warmth? Had he ever? What do we do? I asked finally. First, we protect your assets. I've drafted a new will and trust documents that explicitly exclude Caleb from any control position. I've also prepared power of attorney papers naming me as your representative in case of incapacity, which is not going to happen, but we need to block his play. And the house? That's trickier. Technically, you could serve them with eviction notices, but that would get ugly fast and might play into his narrative about your mental state. Instead, I think we need to be more strategic. We spent the next hour outlining a plan. By the time I ended the call, the cafe had filled with the morning crowd, and my coffee had gone cold. I ordered another cup and opened my laptop to execute the first steps. First, I transferred more substantial funds to my new private account. Then I emailed my financial advisor with instructions to revoke Caleb's access to all information about my investments. Finally, I contacted a real estate attorney Sloane had recommended to discuss creating an LLC to hold the property, a simple but effective way to add a layer of protection. When I returned to the house, Caleb was waiting for me in the kitchen. He wore the concerned expression he'd perfected over the years, eyebrows slightly furrowed, mouth turned down at the corners. "Mom, where have you been? We were worried." The "we" grated on me. "I went out for coffee. I wasn't aware I needed to leave a note. It's just not like you to disappear." "I didn't disappear, Caleb. I left my house for an hour." "Our house," Vanessa corrected, sweeping into the kitchen in yoga clothes she'd never used for actual yoga. "Family home, remember?" I set down my purse with deliberate calm. "Actually, Vanessa, that's what I'd like to discuss. This isn't a family home. It's my home, purchased with my money, titled in my name." Caleb and Vanessa exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Mom," Caleb began in his patient voice, "we need to talk about the future, about arrangements that make sense for everyone." "I'm listening." I took a seat at the island counter, forcing them to position themselves across from me. "We've been thinking," he continued, "that this house represents a significant portion of your assets. It might make more financial sense to convert it to a more liquid investment. You want me to sell my dream home that I purchased 6 months ago?" "Not exactly sell," Vanessa interjected. "More like restructure. We've been looking at some wonderful communities for active seniors." "I'm not going to a retirement community," I interrupted, my voice flat. "Mom, please just listen." Caleb spread his hands in a placating gesture. "The Singapore opportunity is huge for my career. Vanessa and I would need to relocate, possibly for years. We can't just leave you here alone." "I've been alone most of my adult life, Caleb. I managed to build a company and raise you without help. That was different. You were younger. I'm 67, not incapacitated." Vanessa sighed dramatically. "Eleanor, we're trying to help. This house is too much for you to manage alone. The stairs, the maintenance. The stairs I climb daily without issue. The maintenance handled by services I pay for." I smiled thinly. "Or perhaps you mean the financial burden, which doesn't exist, given that I purchased the house outright?" Caleb's expression hardened. "Mom, I'm trying to have a rational conversation about your future, but you're being defensive and difficult, which honestly just reinforces my concerns." "Concerns about what exactly?" He hesitated just long enough for me to know I'd caught him. "About your well-being. Your judgment lately has been erratic." There it was. The first public play in his conservatorship strategy. I felt a cold fury build inside me, but kept my expression neutral. Erratic how? The excessive spending, for one thing. That dinner party last night cost more than most people's monthly mortgage. I wasn't aware I needed your approval for how I spend my money. It's not about approval. It's about looking out for your best interests. He reached across the counter as if to take my hand, but I pulled back. Mom, I'm worried about you. We both are. The concern in his voice sounded so genuine that for a moment I almost doubted myself. Had I misunderstood? Was this really about care and not control? Then I remembered the conservatorship papers Graham had found, the consultations with attorneys behind my back, the documented evidence of my supposed decline. I appreciate your concern, I said carefully, but my finances and my housing decisions remain my own to make. Vanessa's smile turned brittle. We're family, Eleanor. Family looks out for each other, makes sacrifices for each other. Interesting you should mention sacrifices, I replied. I've made quite a few in the name of family lately, including giving up my master bedroom, my privacy, and my peace of mind. Caleb stood up straighter. If you feel we're imposing, I don't feel it. You are. The silence that followed was thick with tension. Finally, Caleb sighed deeply. I can see you're not in a reasonable frame of mind right now. We'll table this discussion for later. He checked his watch. I have calls to make about the Singapore project. We'll talk tonight. As he left, Vanessa lingered, her eyes cold despite her smile. You know, Eleanor, Caleb has always spoken so highly of your business acumen, how you built something from nothing. But I've always wondered, what did that cost him? All those hours you spent building your company instead of being a present mother? The attack was so unexpected, so precisely aimed to wound, that for a moment I couldn't respond. He turned out rather well despite my shortcomings, I finally said. Successful, confident, perhaps too confident. Her smile never wavered. We're not going anywhere, Eleanor. This house is perfect for our needs, especially with the baby coming. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. Baby? Oh, she covered her mouth in mock surprise. Caleb hasn't told you yet? We're expecting. Due in January. Your first grandchild. She placed a hand on her still flat stomach. Another reason we need to settle these living arrangements quickly. The master suite will make a perfect nursery adjoining our room. She left me standing there, reeling from both the news and the calculated way she delivered it. A grandchild. Something I'd long ago given up hoping for. And now it was being used as another piece in their game to push me out of my own home. I walked to my office on unsteady legs and closed the door behind me. The wall of windows faced the ocean, endless and unchanging despite the chaos in my life. I stood there for a long time, watching the waves break against the rocks below. A baby was coming. My grandchild. The family dynamics had just shifted dramatically, and I needed time to process what this meant for my plans. My phone buzzed with a text from Sloan. Papers ready for signature. Can meet today. I closed my eyes briefly. Was I really prepared to go through with this? To take legal action that would create an irreparable rift with my only child, just as he was about to become a father? Then I remembered Vanessa's cold smile. The conservatorship papers. The retirement community brochures I'd found tucked into Caleb's briefcase. The way they'd colonized my home without a second thought for what I wanted or needed. This wasn't about the baby. It was about respect, about boundaries, about not allowing myself to be erased from my own life. I texted back, I'll be there at 2 p.m. Then I opened my laptop and began researching pregnancy and grandparental rights. If Caleb and Vanessa thought a baby would weaken my resolve, they had seriously miscalculated. Nothing, not even the promise of a grandchild, would make me surrender my dignity or my home. But I would need to adjust my strategy, because now the stakes were even higher. Sloane's office in Century City was a sleek testament to her success. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern art, and a view of the Los Angeles skyline that justified her hourly rate. When I arrived, she was waiting with Graham Pierce and another woman I didn't recognize. Eleanor, this is Judith Chen, Sloane introduced us. She's a specialist in elder law and mental capacity cases. I raised an eyebrow. Am I that old? Judith, a composed woman in her 50s with a no-nonsense bob, smiled slightly. In these cases, elder can mean anyone over 60, and given what Graham has uncovered, we thought my expertise might be useful. We settled around Sloane's conference table, where folders were arranged with military precision. "Before we begin," Sloane said, "I want to confirm something. Graham discovered this morning that Caleb has scheduled an appointment with Dr. Martin Reeves for next week." "Who is Dr. Reeves?" "A neuropsychologist who specializes in cognitive assessments, often used in conservatorship cases." The implication was clear. "He's planning to have me evaluated without my knowledge." "That's our assumption," Graham confirmed. "The appointment is in your name, but the contact number listed is Caleb's cell." "How would he even get me there?" I asked, bewildered by the audacity. "People in these situations often create pretexts," Judith explained gently. "A routine checkup that turns into something else, or they claim it's a specialist appointment for a minor issue." I thought about how carefully Caleb had been watching me, documenting supposed lapses. Setting traps, essentially. My own son. "What do we do?" I asked. Sloane pushed a folder toward me. "First, we establish your clear mental capacity with our own documentation. I've arranged for an independent evaluation with Dr. Harriet Wong, one of the most respected geriatric psychiatrists in California. She can see you tomorrow. And then? Then we create a legal fortress around you and your assets." She opened another folder containing dozens of documents. New will, healthcare directive, durable power of attorney, revocation of all previous financial authorizations, and the LLC structure for the house. Once you sign these, Caleb's path to conservatorship becomes much more difficult. "What about the baby?" I asked. "Vanessa told me this morning she's pregnant." The three of them exchanged glances. "Convenient timing," Graham said dryly. "But is it true?" Sloane asked. "I don't know. I have no reason to doubt it." "It complicates matters emotionally," Judith acknowledged. "But legally, it changes nothing about your right to protect yourself and your assets." I spent the next 2 hours signing documents, each signature feeling like both a severing and a liberation. When we finished, Sloane gathered the papers and handed them to her assistant for processing. "What happens next?" I asked. "Graham will continue his investigation," Sloane said. "We need to understand the full extent of Caleb's financial situation and any other plans he might have made. Meanwhile, Judith is preparing responses in case he files the conservatorship petition. And the house? The transfer to the LLC will be complete by end of week. After that, you can decide how to handle the current occupants." I nodded, feeling both resolute and hollow. I should get back. They'll wonder where I've been. "You don't owe them explanations," Sloane reminded me. "But in this case, less information is better. Don't tip your hand." On the drive home, the coastal highway stretched before me like a metaphor for the choice I'd made. Clear but winding, with unseen dangers around each curve. I'd signed the papers, committed to this path. There was no turning back now. When I arrived home, the house was unusually quiet. A note on the kitchen counter informed me that Vanessa and her parents had gone shopping in Beverly Hills. No mention of when they'd return. Caleb was presumably at work. I took advantage of the rare solitude to walk through the house, really seeing it for the first time in months. Evidence of the invasion was everywhere. Diane's tacky figurines cluttering my carefully curated shelves. Richard's golf trophies displayed on the mantel. Vanessa's bland taste gradually erasing mine in every room they'd taken over. In the master bedroom, my bedroom, I found Caleb's clothes neatly hung in my custom closet, Vanessa's expensive creams spread across my vanity. The room smelled of her cloying perfume rather than the subtle lavender I preferred. I didn't touch anything. Not yet. But I took photographs with my phone, documenting every intrusion for the file Graham was building. My phone rang as I was examining the guest house, which Vanessa's sister had turned into what appeared to be a permanent residence. "Eleanor, it's Graham. We found something you need to know immediately." "What is it?" "Caleb made inquiries with 3 real estate agents about listing your property. One of them forwarded me emails showing he represented himself as having your power of attorney." My hand tightened around the phone. "He was planning to sell my house without my knowledge?" "It appears so. He told the agents you were experiencing health issues and had authorized him to handle the transaction." "That's fraud." "Yes, it is. And there's more. We've traced some unusual financial activity from the joint account you still have with him. Large transfers to an account in Vanessa's name only." I thought of all the times I'd added money to that joint account over the years, intending it as a safety net for Caleb. How many of those deposits had he transferred away? How much? I asked, my voice tight. Just over 200,000 in the past 3 months. The amount shocked me, though perhaps it shouldn't have. Can we get it back? Possibly through legal action, but it complicates our strategy. This moves beyond just protecting you. We're now dealing with potential financial crimes. I sank onto a lounge chair, suddenly exhausted. What do you suggest? Document everything. Don't confront them yet. And Eleanor, be careful. People who are willing to go this far rarely stop when discovered. After ending the call, I sat for a long time looking out at the ocean. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that it defied my understanding. When had my son become this person? Had he always been this way, and I'd been too busy, too blinded by maternal love to see it? I was still sitting there when I heard cars in the driveway. Taking a deep breath, I composed my face into a neutral expression and went to meet them. Vanessa and her parents bustled in, laden with shopping bags. Behind them came Caleb, earlier than his usual return time. "Mom," he said with exaggerated cheer. "There you are. We were thinking about taking you to dinner tonight." "Oh?" I kept my tone light, casual. "What's the occasion?" "Do we need an occasion to take you out?" Vanessa asked, her voice honey-sweet. "We thought Nobu, you love their black cod, right?" The solicitousness was new and immediately suspicious. Something had changed in their strategy. "That sounds lovely," I said, playing along. "Let me just freshen up." In the safety of the blue bedroom, I texted Sloane. "They're suddenly being nice, taking me to dinner at Nobu. What's happening?" Her response was immediate. "Proceed with caution. They may be setting the stage for something. Record any conversation if you can." I changed into a simple black dress, applied fresh makeup, and activated the recording app on my phone before slipping it into my purse. Whatever game they were playing, I would be ready. Dinner at Nobu was a surreal experience. Caleb ordered expensive sake and raised a toast to family. Vanessa chatted about nursery colors and baby names, while her parents beamed like this was the most natural family dinner in the world. No one mentioned retirement communities or financial arrangements or my supposed mental decline. Over sashimi, Caleb casually mentioned a charity gala the following week. "You should come, Mom. It's for the Children's Hospital. Lots of your old design world connections will be there." "That sounds nice," I said cautiously. "Great. We've already reserved a table. Oh, and there are some papers I need you to sign for it. Donor forms. You know how these things are." And there it was, the trap. Donor forms that would almost certainly contain something else entirely. Perhaps the conservatorship petition itself, or documents transferring the house. "I'd be happy to look them over," I said. "You can leave them with me, and I'll have my assistant review them." "Assistant?" Caleb looked confused. "What assistant?" I smiled. "Oh, did I not mention? I've hired a personal assistant to help me manage my affairs. Sloane recommended her." The flash of alarm that crossed his face was almost worth everything I'd been through. "You don't need an assistant, Mom. I can handle anything you need." "I'm sure you can, darling. But with your big Singapore project coming up, I wouldn't want to burden you. Besides, Melissa is a paralegal by training, very detail-oriented about paperwork." Melissa didn't exist, but Caleb didn't need to know that. Vanessa's hand found Caleb's under the table, a gesture I wasn't supposed to notice. Her smile remained fixed, but her eyes had hardened. "Speaking of your affairs," she said smoothly, "we should really discuss the future living arrangements soon. With the baby coming, we'll need to make some decisions." "Of course," I agreed pleasantly. "In fact, I've been thinking about that very thing. I have some ideas I'd like to share with both of you. Perhaps tomorrow?" They exchanged another look. Relief, I thought. They believed I was coming around to their plan. "Tomorrow would be perfect," Caleb said. As we left the restaurant, he placed a careful hand on my elbow, guiding me as if I were fragile. The touch felt foreign, calculating. This man who shared my blood, who I had raised alone, was now a stranger plotting against me. But I was no longer the unsuspecting victim. Tomorrow, they would discover exactly who they were dealing with, and it wasn't the compliant, easily manipulated woman they believed me to be. It was Eleanor Reed, who had built an empire from nothing once before, and who was fully prepared to do it again. The next morning, I met with Dr. Harriet Wong for the mental capacity evaluation Sloan had arranged. The doctor was a petite woman with silver-streaked black hair and keen eyes that missed nothing. For 2 hours, she administered tests, asked questions about my personal history, business decisions, and current affairs, and observed my reasoning processes. "Mrs. Reed," she said as we concluded, "I've conducted thousands of these evaluations over my career. Your cognitive function is exceptional for any age, let alone 67. "Thank you," I said, oddly moved by the validation. "Will that be reflected in your report?" "Absolutely. In my professional opinion, you show no signs of cognitive impairment or diminished capacity whatsoever. In fact, your executive function scores are in the top percentile for your demographic." She closed her notebook. "I understand the difficult situation you're facing. Rest assured, my report will be thorough and unequivocal." Armed with this professional confirmation of what I already knew, I drove back to Malibu with a renewed sense of purpose. Today was the day I would begin reclaiming my life. When I arrived home, Vanessa's parents were loading suitcases into their car. "You're leaving?" I asked, unable to keep a note of hope from my voice. Diane adjusted her designer sunglasses. "Just for a few days. Richard has a golf tournament in Palm Springs." "How nice. Drive safely." I kept walking, not bothering to mask my relief at their temporary departure. Inside, I found Caleb in the kitchen, laptop open, papers spread around him. He quickly gathered them when he saw me. "Mom, good timing. I wanted to talk to you about those donor forms for the gala." "Actually," I said, setting down my purse, "I'd like to have our discussion about future arrangements first. Is Vanessa home?" "She's upstairs resting. Morning sickness." His expression turned solicitous. "You're going to be such a wonderful grandmother." The manipulation was so transparent, it was almost insulting. 6 months of treating me like an inconvenience, and now I was suddenly wonderful because it served their narrative. "Let's sit on the terrace," I suggested. "The fresh air will do us good." He followed me outside, where the October sun warmed the stone patio. The ocean stretched before us, constant and indifferent to human dramas. "I've given a lot of thought to our situation," I began, choosing my words carefully. "And you're right. With the baby coming, we need a more defined arrangement." Caleb leaned forward, eager. "I'm so glad you're seeing things practically. We have some excellent options to discuss." "I'm sure you do. But first, I'd like you to explain something to me." I met his eyes directly. "Why did you contact real estate agents about selling this house without consulting me?" The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" "Please don't insult me by lying, Caleb. I have copies of the emails you sent representing yourself as having power of attorney." "Those agents misunderstood," he said quickly. "I was just gathering information. And the neuropsychologist appointment you made in my name for next week? Was that also a misunderstanding?" His expression hardened. "How do you know about that?" "I know everything, Caleb. The conservatorship papers, the money you've been transferring from our joint account to Vanessa's private one, the documented evidence of my supposed cognitive decline." He stood abruptly. "You've been spying on me?" "I've been protecting myself. There's a difference." "From what? From your family trying to help you?" His voice rose. "You're not thinking clearly, Mom. You haven't been since Dad left. You've been making one impulsive decision after another." "Your father left 30 years ago," I said quietly. "And I built a multi-million-dollar company after that impulsive decision to divorce him when I found him in bed with his secretary. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're stuck in the past, bringing up ancient history instead of focusing on what's happening now." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. "You need help, Mom. Professional help. And if you won't get it voluntarily, you'll force it on me through conservatorship?" I finished for him. "Take control of my assets? Sell my home? Ship me off to some facility while you enjoy the proceeds? It's not like that." "Then what is it like, Caleb? Explain it to me." He sat back down, visibly trying to control his temper. "We're worried about you. Living alone in this massive house, spending recklessly, making decisions without consulting anyone. Without consulting you mean? Because apparently at 67, after running my own company for 3 decades, I'm suddenly incapable of managing my own affairs without my son's approval." "Mom, no." I held up a hand. "I've heard enough. Now you're going to listen to me." I took a deep breath. As of yesterday, the title to this house has been transferred to an LLC, of which I am the sole manager. My will has been updated to reflect new beneficiaries. My financial accounts have been secured and restructured. And I have undergone a complete neuropsychological evaluation that confirms what I already knew. I am fully competent and of sound mind. The shock on his face would have been satisfying if it wasn't also heartbreaking. My son, my only child, had never expected me to fight back. "You can't do that," he stammered. "I already have. We'll challenge it. The LLC transfer, the will." "On what grounds? That I'm incompetent? Good luck with that after Dr. Wong's evaluation." "That I was coerced? By whom?" "The only people attempting coercion in this situation are you and Vanessa." He stared at me, the calculation visible behind his eyes. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is." I stood up, suddenly weary of the whole charade. "You have 30 days to find alternative living arrangements. You're evicting us, your own family, while Vanessa is pregnant? I'm reclaiming my home after you attempted to steal it from me. And yes, I'm giving you reasonable notice to leave, which is more consideration than you plan to show me." "Mom, be reasonable. I've been reasonable for 3 months, while you and Vanessa's family treated my home like a hotel and me like unwanted staff. I've been reasonable while you plotted behind my back to have me declared incompetent. I'm done being reasonable, Caleb. Now, I'm being resolute." The sliding glass door opened, and Vanessa stepped onto the terrace. Her face was carefully composed, but her eyes blazed with anger. "I heard everything," she said coldly. "This is how you treat family? After everything we've done for you? What exactly have you done for me, Vanessa? Taken over my home? Relegated me to a guest room? Planned renovations without my consent? Treated me like an inconvenient relic? We've included you. Made sure you weren't alone. I wasn't alone before you arrived. I was at peace." I looked between them, these strangers who shared my blood and my roof, but not my values. I don't know when you decided I was a problem to be managed, rather than a person to be respected. But that perception ends today. Caleb stood, putting his arm around Vanessa's shoulders. "If that's how you feel, we'll leave. Today. And don't expect to be part of your grandchild's life." The threat cut deep, exactly as he'd intended. "That's your choice," I said, fighting to keep my voice steady. "But consider this. What kind of parents will you be if this is how you treat your own mother? What lessons are you teaching your child about respect, about honesty, about family? Don't you dare question our parenting," Vanessa hissed. "You, who was too busy building a company to properly raise your own son." "I raised a son who had every advantage, every opportunity," I replied. "What he became with those advantages is his own responsibility, just as what you do next is your choice." They left the terrace without another word. Within hours, they had packed their essential belongings and departed, leaving behind most of the detritus of their 3-month occupation. Vanessa's parents' things remained in their room, Caleb promising darkly that they would return for everything soon. The house felt cavernous in their absence. I walked through the empty rooms, listening to the silence, feeling both victorious and defeated. I had won back my home, but potentially lost my only child, and any chance at knowing my grandchild. That evening, as the sun set over the Pacific in a blaze of orange and gold, my phone rang. It was Sloane. "How did it go?" she asked without preamble. "They're gone. For now." "Good, but we're not done. Graham has more information about the financial irregularities. Caleb may have used your identity for more than just the real estate inquiries." "What are you saying?" "We've found evidence of applications for loans using your social security number and financial information. Large loans, Eleanor." I closed my eyes, absorbing this new betrayal. "Identity theft? My own son?" "It appears so. We need to move quickly to protect you further." "Do whatever is necessary," I said, suddenly exhausted. After the call, I wandered into the kitchen. Diane had rearranged everything, and I couldn't even find my own wine glasses. In frustration, I grabbed a coffee mug and poured myself a generous serving of Cabernet. Standing at the window, looking out at the ocean that had once represented such promise, I allowed myself to feel the full weight of grief, not just for the son I had lost, perhaps had never truly had, but for the family I had hoped would fill these rooms. The laughter, the shared meals, the mutual respect and love. But I wouldn't be pushed aside. I wouldn't be erased from my own life. And I certainly wouldn't surrender the home I had earned through decades of work. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Caleb wouldn't give up easily, especially with financial crimes potentially coming to light. But tonight, I would reclaim my master bedroom, sleep in my own bed, and begin the process of rebuilding my life on my terms. Eleanor Reed had never been a victim, and she wasn't about to become one now. 6 months passed like the tide, sometimes rushing forward, sometimes receding, but always in motion. The war with Caleb didn't end with his departure. It merely entered a new phase. First came the legal threats, letters from an attorney demanding I cease and desist my harassment and rescind the illegal eviction. Sloan handled these with cool efficiency, responding with documentation of the LLC transfer, my clear mental competence, and pointed questions about the unauthorized financial activities Graham had uncovered. Then came the social campaign. I began receiving concerned calls from old business associates and distant relatives, all of whom had heard about my condition from Caleb. He had spun a convincing tale of his aging mother's decline and his heroic efforts to protect me from myself. He always was good at storytelling, I told Sloan over lunch at my favorite oceanside cafe. Even as a child, he could make himself the hero of any situation. Well, his narrative is falling apart now that we've filed the identity theft charges, she replied, spearing a piece of grilled salmon. The evidence is irrefutable. The discovery that Caleb had taken out over $300,000 in loans using my information had been the final straw. After confirming the fraud with forensic accountants, we'd had no choice but to file criminal charges. It wasn't a decision I made lightly, but as Graham pointed out, failing to act could leave me financially liable for debts I never incurred. Has he tried to contact you about the baby? Sloan asked gently. No. I set down my fork, my appetite suddenly gone. The child is due any day now. My grandchild will be born into this mess we've created. That he created, Sloan corrected firmly. Eleanor, you need to be clear about this. You didn't start this war. But I escalated it, I admitted. I could have just let them have the house, moved somewhere smaller, avoided all this ugliness. And then what? Watched them sell it out from under you? Allowed Caleb to drain your accounts with impunity? Submitted to a conservatorship based on lies? She shook her head. That's not avoiding ugliness. That's enabling theft and abuse. She was right, of course. But the knowledge didn't ease the ache in my chest when I thought of the grandchild I might never meet. In the month since Caleb and Vanessa's departure, I had reclaimed my home in stages. First, I moved back into the master bedroom, purging Vanessa's lingering scents and reorganizing the space to my preferences. Then I hired a service to pack up all their remaining possessions, which were placed in storage with the access information forwarded to their attorney. Gradually, I redecorated the rooms they had altered, erasing the evidence of their occupation. The process was both therapeutic and painful, a symbolic reclamation that highlighted the emptiness of the space. The house is too big for just me, I acknowledged to Marjorie over dinner one evening. I rattle around in it like a pea in a drum. So downsize, she suggested practically. Sell it and buy something that feels right. But I couldn't bring myself to let it go, not after fighting so hard to keep it. Instead, I hired a property management company to handle short-term vacation rentals of the guest house, bringing life and energy to the property without surrendering my privacy. And then, unexpectedly, an opportunity arose through Robert Chen, of all people. He called me directly, bypassing Caleb, to discuss a consulting opportunity. I was impressed with your insights that evening at dinner, he said. And I've followed your design career with admiration. We're developing a boutique hotel concept in Singapore and California. Would you consider advising on the project? The irony wasn't lost on me. The Singapore opportunity that Caleb had been so eager to secure now being offered to his discarded mother. I accepted without hesitation, grateful for the chance to use my skills again and to fill my days with purpose beyond legal battles. The project introduced me to Mei Chen's younger sister, Lian, who managed the family's American real estate holdings. At 58, Lian was vibrant, sharp, and unexpectedly funny. We connected immediately over shared experiences in male-dominated industries. Men always think they're the only ones who understand business, she said during one of our marathon working sessions at my dining table. It gives us an advantage when they underestimate us. She began stopping by even when we didn't have scheduled meetings, bringing takeout and stories from her travels. Sometimes we worked late into the night, our ideas flowing as freely as the wine. Other times we simply sat on the terrace, watching the ocean and talking about everything and nothing. It wasn't until Marjorie raised an eyebrow during one of our lunch dates that I realized Leon had become more than a colleague. "She's just a friend," I insisted. Marjorie hummed skeptically. "A friend who brings you orchids and looks at you like you hung the moon." I dismissed her teasing, but later that evening, when Leon's hand brushed mine as we reached for the same design sample, I felt a flutter I hadn't experienced in decades. At 67, I wasn't prepared for the possibility of romance, but then again, I hadn't been prepared for any of the upheavals of the past year. Life continued its unexpected turns. The Chen Hotel project expanded, consuming more of my time and reigniting my creative passion. Graham's investigation resulted in formal charges against Caleb for identity theft and fraud, and my attorneys secured a permanent restraining order when Vanessa showed up unannounced one afternoon, 8 months pregnant, and demanding access to family heirlooms she claimed were hers. The restraining order was in effect when my phone rang at 3 in the morning in late January. "Mrs. Reed?" An unfamiliar voice. "This is Nurse Phillips from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. I'm calling about your son, Caleb Reed, and his wife." My heart stopped. "Has something happened?" "Vanessa Reed has been admitted in active labor. There have been some complications, and she requested that we contact you." I was dressed and in my car within 10 minutes, speeding down the empty coastal highway toward Los Angeles, my mind racing with possibilities. Why would Vanessa ask for me after everything that had happened? Was this a trap? Or was there truly an emergency that transcended our bitter feud? At the hospital, I was directed to the maternity ward, where I found Caleb pacing a waiting room, his face gray with exhaustion and worry. He froze when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" "The hospital called me. They said Vanessa asked for me." "That's impossible. She wouldn't." A doctor emerged from the double doors, his surgical mask pulled down around his neck. "Mr. Reed, your wife is stabilized, but we need to perform an emergency C-section. The baby's heart rate is dropping, and we can't wait any longer." Caleb swayed slightly. "Can I be with her?" "I'm afraid not. This is a high-risk procedure under general anesthesia. But you can wait here, and we'll update you as soon as we have news." The doctor noticed me. "Are you family?" "I'm Caleb's mother," I said quietly. "Good. Stay with him, please. This is going to be a difficult hour." As the doctor disappeared back through the doors, Caleb and I stood in awkward silence, the weight of months of hostility and legal battles between us. Finally, he sank into a chair, head in his hands. "I didn't tell them to call you." "I know." I sat across from him, maintaining a careful distance. "But I'm glad they did." He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "Why? So you can see me at my lowest? Add this to your court documents? Because despite everything, I'm still your mother. And that's my grandchild in there." His facade cracked then, a sob escaping before he could suppress it. "Everything's falling apart. The fraud charges, the Singapore project collapsing, and now this." He gestured helplessly toward the delivery room doors. "The doctors say there could be brain damage if they don't deliver immediately. And Vanessa has been bleeding." I moved to sit beside him, not touching but closer. "The doctors here are excellent. They'll do everything possible." "I never thought it would come to this," he whispered. "Any of it." I didn't respond. This wasn't the moment for recriminations or explanations. We sat in silence, united only by our shared anxiety for Vanessa and the baby. The hour crawled by, punctuated only by the occasional update from a nurse. Finally, the doctor reappeared, his face revealing nothing. "Mr. Reed, would you come with me, please?" Caleb stood on shaky legs. The doctor glanced at me. "You too, Mrs. Reed, if you'd like." We followed him through the labyrinthine hallways to a small recovery room. Inside, Vanessa lay pale and still, connected to various monitors. And beside her, in a clear bassinet, was a tiny bundle wrapped in a hospital blanket. "Congratulations," the doctor said softly. "You have a daughter. 5 pounds, 3 ounces. She's small but healthy. No signs of distress now that she's delivered. Your wife lost a significant amount of blood, but we've stabilized her. She'll be unconscious for a few more hours. Caleb approached the bassinet with reverent steps, looking down at his daughter's face. She's perfect, he whispered. I hung back, uncertain of my place in this tableau. But Caleb, to my surprise, turned to me. Mom, he said, his voice breaking, come meet your granddaughter. I moved forward, looking down at the tiny face with its delicate features, Caleb's nose, Vanessa's chin. My granddaughter. Despite everything, this new life connected us. Would you like to hold her? The nurse asked, already lifting the bundle. Before I could answer, the warm weight of the baby was in my arms. She squirmed slightly, then settled against me with a sigh that seemed to release all the tension of the past year. In that moment, looking down at her perfect face, I understood something I'd lost sight of during the bitter battles. Family isn't defined by houses or assets or control. It's defined by love, complicated, imperfect, sometimes painful love. She's beautiful, I said, my voice thick with emotion. What's her name? Caleb hesitated, then said quietly, Eleanor. Her name is Eleanor Jean Reed. I looked up, startled. You named her after me? After everything? He met my gaze, his eyes filled with complicated emotions, regret, pride, uncertainty. Some things are more important than houses or money or even pride. I'm learning that too late, but I'm learning. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. There were still charges pending, trust destroyed, bridges burned. But as I stood in that hospital room, holding my namesake in my arms, I felt the first tentative threads of a different future beginning to weave themselves. 6 months later, that future continues to unfold in ways I never imagined. Caleb accepted a plea deal for the fraud charges, probation, restitution, and mandatory counseling. Vanessa and I maintain a careful, distant cordiality for baby Eleanor's sake. They live in San Diego now, close enough for monthly visits, but far enough to maintain necessary boundaries. My Malibu home has transformed too. The guest house provides a steady rental income, while the main house has become a hub for the Chen Hotel project team. Leon now has her own key and her own side of the closet in the master bedroom. Life at 68 looks nothing like I expected when I bought this house. It's fuller, more complex, with deeper joys and sharper pains than I anticipated. But it's mine. Every decision, every relationship, every boundary, chosen with clear eyes and an open heart. The Pacific still crashes against the cliffs below my terrace. I still watch the sunset with a glass of wine. But now I know with bone-deep certainty what I only suspected before. The most beautiful views aren't the ones you purchase with money. They're the ones you earn by standing your ground, knowing your worth, and refusing to be erased from your own story. My name is Eleanor Reed. This is my home. This is my life. And I am exactly where I belong. If you've ever had to stand up for yourself when family tried to take advantage, hit subscribe and share your story below. My next video about how I discovered my husband's secret family drops tomorrow. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.